Sometimes people act in certain ways that feel unavoidable, almost like a way to escape when life gets messy. It often starts quietly, maybe as a way to run from a constant feeling of sadness or emptiness. Over time, these actions turn into habits. What was once a quick fix slowly becomes a harmful cycle. The search for relief, just a short break from pain, turns into something damaging. But why does this keep happening? Why do people keep chasing something they know isn't good for them? The truth is, these behaviors usually come from a deeper hurt, an attempt to fill a feeling that seems impossible to fill. It's not just about feeling good in the moment. It's about trying to reconnect with something missing inside. Even though it looks harmful on the outside, underneath it's a hidden search for meaning and a way to heal an invisible pain that people might not even be aware of. Every addiction tells a story of feeling disconnected and looking for something to make life feel whole. Understanding this is the first step to really seeing what's going on. Have you ever wondered why some people get caught in addictions they can't seem to escape, while others manage to avoid them? What's behind this almost uncontrollable urge to run away from reality? Is it just about willpower? Or is there something deeper most of us don't notice? Carl Jung, a famous psychologist, had a different way of looking at it. For him, addiction wasn't just a personal weakness or a bad habit. It was a desperate search for meaning, an almost sad effort to fill a deep emptiness that many people feel. Imagine for a second that addiction is like an open window into something bigger, a frustrated search for something beyond ourselves. It might sound strange, but what if people who get caught up in harmful behaviors are actually trying to find a way to connect with something meaningful? A force that would give their chaotic lives some purpose. Jung believed that, deep down, these people weren't just running from pain or reality. They were trying to reach something deeper in the universe that goes beyond everyday life. The question is, how many of us really get this? How many have ever thought that addiction could be a way to cope with the lack of a bigger purpose? This idea changes everything. Think about all the times you or someone you know has looked for answers in the wrong places, whether through drugs, self-destructive habits, or even more subtle addictions like working too much or always needing approval. Isn't the real problem not the addiction itself, but what it's trying to hide? This is where Jung's ideas get interesting. He asks us to look past the surface and ask ourselves, what are we really looking for? If you've ever thought about that question, then we can explore together what's behind this inner struggle and see how many of us might be stuck without even realizing it. From Jung's point of view, addiction is more complicated than it seems at first. He thought addiction isn't just a harmful habit or a personality flaw. It's a mistaken effort to fill a deep emptiness that many people carry inside all their lives. Imagine someone turning to alcohol after a tough day, hoping it will ease their emotional pain. But what are they really after? According to Jung, it's not just the temporary relief alcohol gives. It's a way to try to rise above their suffering and connect with something peaceful. But instead of finding that peace through self-awareness or spiritual growth, they fall deeper into habits that make the emptiness worse. This failed search for something more meaningful is what traps people in addiction. Jung's view is more kind and understanding. He sees addiction as a failed attempt to become whole. Addiction isn't just running away, it's a search. And many people don't realize that addiction can take many forms. It's not just about drugs or alcohol. Lots of people today lose themselves in work, shopping, social media, or chasing success. All of these behaviors show the same need: to escape reality and find something bigger that makes them feel complete and calm. Jung called this a search for wholeness, a way to bring all parts of ourselves together into something greater. But many get stuck in addiction because they look for this outside themselves instead of within. When people try to fill a spiritual emptiness with outside addictions, they actually move further away from who they really are. That's where philosophy and personal growth come in as important tools. Take Stoicism, for example. It teaches us that we don't need to look outside ourselves for what we already have inside. Marcus Aurelius and other ancient thinkers talked about facing pain and living simply as a way to find true inner peace. When we accept ourselves and stop running from our fears, addiction loses its hold. This search for something bigger is something we all experience at some point. But what if we use that energy to explore practices that really help us discover ourselves and connect with who we are? Jung believed that by looking inward, we can face our shadow side and understand what drives us deep down. Meditation, philosophy, and spiritual practices can help us deal with pain in a healthy way, without falling into habits that push us further away from our true selves. Ask yourself, what are you really looking for in your daily habits? Are you trying to fill a hole that can only be healed by reconnecting with your true self? Jung introduced a powerful idea called the shadow. The shadow is the part of us we hide, the emotions, desires, and urges we think are unacceptable, but pretending it's not there doesn't make it go away. In fact, the more we push it down, the stronger it gets, and it finds sneaky ways to show up in our behavior. One common way the shadow shows itself is through addiction. For Jung, addiction often comes from these hidden parts of our mind that we haven't faced. What we deny inside can end up controlling us without us realizing it. Think of the shadow as a force that's always there, even when we act like it's not. When we ignore it, it starts to affect every part of our lives. For example, someone who bottles up anger or resentment might turn to alcohol or drugs to cope without knowing they're actually feeding those hidden feelings. This creates a cycle where trying to escape only makes the problem worse. In this way, addiction is an attempt to face our shadow, but it ends up making things harder instead of better. Jung believed the way out of addiction is through shadow integration. This means recognizing the darker parts of ourselves and accepting them as part of who we are. When we do this, we stop denying our true feelings and start understanding how to handle them in a healthy way. For instance, a person who hides their need for control might develop a gambling addiction, trying to feel powerful in a controlled setting. But if they face that need openly and work on it consciously, addiction loses its grip. Facing our shadow takes courage and self-awareness. We have to look inside and admit we all have sides we don't like. But when we bring those parts to light, they stop controlling us in harmful ways. Jung shows us that by accepting our shadow, we can turn what once felt like a burden into a strength. Addiction stops being the enemy and becomes a chance to grow. It's like by accepting all parts of ourselves, we can change the energy that used to drive us toward addiction into something positive that helps us grow. In life, people often hide their weaknesses, fears, and frustrations. But the more we hide, the more our shadow becomes a threat. And addiction can be the first sign something's out of balance inside. Facing and integrating the shadow isn't easy. It means dealing with our flaws, mistakes, and feelings we'd rather ignore. But it's in this honest facing that real change happens. When we integrate our shadow, we realize it's not our enemy. It's part of being human. Jung encourages us not just to accept our shadow, but to actively work it into our lives. We can do this through therapy, meditation, journaling, or other self-reflective practices that help us explore our deepest feelings. The more we uncover what we've hidden, the more control we get over our actions. And over time, addiction can lose its power over us. What truly frees us is knowing who we really are, both our shadows and our light. For Jung, the spiritual emptiness at the core of many addictions comes from losing touch with our true self, the part of us that connects our conscious mind with the unconscious and represents our whole being. When we disconnect from this core, we feel a deep emptiness, like something important is missing. That emptiness leads people to try and fill the void with compulsive behaviors, whether it's drugs and alcohol, endless scrolling on technology, shopping sprees, or toxic relationships. But these quick fixes only cover up the problem for a while. The emptiness inside keeps growing until we learn to reconnect with ourselves in a real, meaningful way. This problem is even bigger in today's world. We live in a society that constantly pushes us to focus on material things, success, and working non-stop. Everywhere we look, we get messages telling us our worth depends on what we own, how much we get done, and the status we achieve. But focusing so much on outside stuff often cuts us off from what really matters: our inner self, our soul. Because of this, many people feel disconnected from themselves and turn to habits or addictions to fill the emptiness inside. They look for quick satisfaction in things like social media, shopping, drinking, or drugs. The irony is, the more they try to fill this emptiness that way, the bigger it grows. Carl Jung had a powerful way of explaining this. He believed the spiritual emptiness can only be filled by reconnecting with the self, the whole of who we are. This means bringing together our conscious mind and the hidden parts of ourselves, including the ones we'd rather ignore. Without doing this, we stay incomplete and keep chasing something that always feels just out of reach. To fill that emptiness, we have to look inward, not outward. Money, status, and praise might give us a short break, but they won't fix the deeper problem of feeling disconnected inside. Real relief comes from reconnecting with who we really are. Jung encouraged people to explore self-discovery. The process of becoming whole is key to overcoming addiction and emptiness. This process helps us find true peace by accepting ourselves without needing outside crutches. When we connect our conscious and unconscious selves, we start to see that the answers we're searching for are already inside us, not out in the world. Many people find comfort in this through meditation, therapy, or philosophy. These tools help us slow down, block out distractions, and rediscover our true selves. The spiritual emptiness is a big issue today, and many people try to escape it by looking for outside distractions. But real healing comes from within. For Jung, understanding ourselves and integrating our whole self is the way to fill that emptiness. When we reconnect with our true selves, addictions lose their power, and we find a peace that success or quick pleasures can't give. The real journey is inward, and that's where we find the meaning we're searching for. To show how addictions can be quiet but still deadly, let's look at Carlos's story. Carlos was just an average guy. On the surface, his life looked fine. A steady job, friends to hang out with on weekends, and a routine that seemed normal. But there was one thing he never stopped to think about: the little escapes that slowly took over his daily life. At first, they seemed harmless: junk food after work, a beer to relax after a tough day, betting on football with friends on Sundays. To Carlos, these were just ways to ease stress and deal with the tiredness and frustrations of life. But he didn't see that these small escapes were turning into a quiet addiction, something that was taking up more and more space in his life without him noticing. As time went on, his habits got worse. One beer became a whole bottle. Occasional gambling turned into a nearly constant thing. Junk food became his usual diet. Carlos felt tired all the time, disconnected from what was happening around him, and even during his free time, he felt like something was missing. His job, which used to motivate him, became a source of stress he couldn't handle. He grew more anxious and irritable, and the feeling that something was wrong never went away. But instead of facing it, Carlos sank deeper into his old habits. To him, his addictions were the easiest way to escape a feeling he couldn't even name: a growing emptiness inside. Carlos didn't realize how bad things had gotten until his life started falling apart. He lost control of his money because of gambling. His health suffered from bad eating and too much drinking. His relationships began to break down. His friends saw less of him, and even his family started to pull away. He was stuck in a vicious cycle that felt impossible to break. Every time he tried to get better, he failed and ended up right back where he started, feeling even more lost. He felt hopeless and began to believe there was no way out. That addiction was the only thing that could fill the hole inside him. Like many who hit rock bottom, Carlos had a wake-up call one morning after a night of heavy drinking and gambling. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. This wasn't the Carlos he knew. He was worn out, both physically and emotionally. In that moment, he knew something had to change. Desperate for answers, Carlos reached out for help. And that's when he found Carl Jung's work. As he learned about Jung's psychology, he understood that his addictions were ways to avoid his shadow. the parts of himself he had buried deep inside. He realized he wasn't just running from everyday problems, but from a much deeper emptiness growing inside him. Carlos also turned to the teachings of Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. They taught that real freedom comes not from running away, but facing life's challenges with courage and simplicity. Inspired by these ideas, Carlos decided to take control of his life again. He started small, cutting back on alcohol, planning healthier meals, and, most importantly, quitting gambling. Each step felt like a win, but he knew he had a long, tough road ahead. Healing wasn't easy. There were times when that emptiness still tempted him, but instead of giving up, Carlos began to look inside himself. He started practicing meditation and self-reflection, diving deeper into Jung's ideas about the self and shadow integration. He found that what he'd been trying to fill with alcohol, gambling, and junk food was really a spiritual emptiness that only reconnecting with himself could heal. Over time, Carlos changed his life. He simplified his daily routine, avoided situations that triggered his old habits, and rebuilt relationships with family and friends who now saw a new person. He realized true peace wasn't about feeding his pain, but facing it head-on. He reconnected with who he really was, let go of chasing quick pleasures, and embraced personal growth. The journey was long, but every step was a victory. Looking back, Carlos doesn't just see his mistakes, he sees how much he grew by facing them. His story shows that no matter how far you fall, there's always a way to rise. He learned that life's true meaning isn't found in momentary escapes, but in growing stronger through hard times. Individuation as healing. Carl Jung believed that individuation is key to beating addiction, and Carlos's story is a great example. Individuation is the process of becoming your true self by bringing together your conscious mind and the hidden parts inside you, including your strengths, weaknesses, and shadows. When we ignore or push down parts of ourselves, they don't just disappear. They come out in unhealthy ways, like addictions, just like Carlos experienced. He tried to ease his pain with harmful habits without realizing he was only covering up the real issue. Individuation means turning inward and facing those hidden parts, your fears, insecurities, and desires. When Carlos started this process, he saw his actions weren't just random choices, but responses to the emptiness and disconnection he felt inside. Individuation is really about reconnecting with your true self, the most authentic part of who you are. Carlos's journey was tough, but by embracing individuation, he began freeing himself from addiction. He stopped looking for approval or relief outside and realized running away wasn't the answer. By working on himself, Carlos learned to accept the parts of his mind he had ignored, his fears, need for control, and insecurities. Once he acknowledged these shadows, they stopped controlling him and instead became chances to grow. Jung teaches that individuation isn't just a way to fix addiction, but a path to true freedom. Carlos noticed patterns in his life, repeating cycles that pulled him back into addiction when he felt insecure or rejected. He used self-reflection to break those cycles, realizing he had to face his feelings directly, understand where his fears came from, and work to heal them. Individuation gave him responsibility for his actions and the clear understanding that he had always been in control of his life. Accepting our flaws was a big part of individuation, and this was huge for Carlos. He had spent years trying to look perfect to please others, but that only pushed him further from his real self. When he stopped pretending and accepted his flaws, he freed himself from the pressure to meet others' expectations. This shift was powerful. He saw his imperfections not as weaknesses but as essential parts of growing. By owning these parts, Carlos found peace without needing to hide or run away into addiction. Ultimately, individuation changed how Carlos approached life. By accepting his shadows and true self, he saw challenges not as burdens but as chances to grow. Beating addiction was just part of the bigger journey. Individuation gave Carlos the freedom to live honestly, without fear of failure or constantly needing approval. He learned that real healing doesn't come from quick fixes, but from looking deep inside, where the answers we're searching for already live. Carl Jung and the power of symbols in healing. Carl Jung believed that symbols and spirituality play a big role in overcoming addiction. To him, symbols aren't just random pictures or signs. They're living parts of our unconscious mind. These deep parts of ourselves can guide us toward better understanding who we really are. Addiction often comes from trying to fill a spiritual emptiness in the wrong way, and Jung saw symbols as a bridge between the part of us we're aware of and the hidden parts we're not. These symbols reveal our hidden fears and desires and can point us toward healing. When we learn what these symbols mean, they become powerful tools for personal growth. Spiritual symbols, like the cross, the mandala, or even light, carry meanings that help us face the darkest parts of ourselves. They connect us to universal ideas found in everyone. Jung believed our unconscious communicates with us through these symbols. By recognizing and embracing them, we can heal on a deeper level. Addiction isn't just harmful behavior. It's a clumsy way of trying to find wholeness and spiritual connection. When we turn to these symbols, we discover a new way to direct our search for something bigger than ourselves. One of Jung's favorite symbols was the tree. It stands for growth, staying grounded, and transformation. He said that just like a tree needs strong roots to grow tall, we need to face our darkest inner struggles to grow spiritually. He put it this way: no tree can reach the sky unless its roots dig deep into the earth, even into the hell within us. To overcome addiction, we have to confront our shadows and bring them into balance. For Jung, spirituality isn't about running away, but about rising above ourselves, with symbols lighting the way to healing and a true connection with something greater. In Carlos's story, symbols played a big part. When he hit his lowest point, he started to find meaning through spirituality. He connected with symbols and archetypes that helped him understand his journey. For example, the hero archetype, a figure on a quest for redemption, helped him see his addictions as part of a bigger growth process. This idea, common in many myths and stories, gave Carlos the strength to face his inner struggles, like a hero facing monsters on the path to freedom. Through spiritual symbols, he also found a way to reconnect with what felt sacred. Before, he tried to fill his emptiness with harmful habits, but by opening himself to the power of these symbols, he started to understand his real purpose. Spirituality gave him a wider view of life. He saw his challenges not as failures, but as steps on a journey toward growth and self-discovery. This spiritual connection didn't just help Carlos beat his addictions. It gave him deeper meaning and clearer direction in life. Jung believed symbols help us make sense of the chaos inside us. For Carlos, these symbols weren't just ideas. They became guides on his journey of change. By reconnecting with his spirituality, he realized healing wasn't about controlling what happens outside, but about balancing what's inside. Spiritual symbols gave him the courage to face his fears and understand his journey was part of something bigger. By embracing symbols and spirituality, Carlos overcame his addictions and found a peace he had never experienced before. Addiction is a tough cycle to break, but psychology shows us that understanding why we behave the way we do is the first step toward change. And here's something else that can help on your path of self-discovery: finding the true meaning of your life. What if I told you that could change everything? Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Be proud. You've made it this far, which shows you're serious about growing. Hope to see you there. Stay strong and keep going.